My son-in-law walked into my house like he already owned the air I breathed. He didn't knock. He never does. Just turned the handle, stepped inside, and started pacing my living room like he was taking inventory of my life. It was a quiet Wednesday, Georgia sunlight, spilling through the blinds, bacon grease still cooling in the skillet, the kind of morning that belongs to old men who've already fought their wars. And then Ethan Caldwell showed up to start another one. Jeremiah, he said, smooth as a salesman, we need to talk about your living arrangements. That's the kind of sentence that sounds polite until you realize it's a knife wrapped in manners. He was wearing one of those slim gray suits, the kind that says I make decisions for people. Expensive watch, cologne like arrogance in a bottle. I knew right then, this wasn't a visit. This was an announcement. He didn't sit down. He didn't ask. He just looked around the room, the same room where I'd raised 38 children who had nowhere else to go, and said, my parents are moving in next week. You'll be transferring to a senior community in Macon. I already scheduled the movers. If you're hearing my voice right now, well, that means my story found its way to you. My name's Jeremiah Cole. I'm 69 years old, a retired high school teacher out here in Willow Creek, Georgia. And if you think life slows down after 60, you haven't lived mine. I've seen good people break, families fall apart, and kindness mistaken for weakness. But what happened in this old house of mine, that was the day I learned what real family looks like, and what happens when someone tries to take it away. If you're watching this, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I'd like to know how far this little story of mine has traveled. And maybe, just maybe, tell me what you think family really means. Because for me, it all began the day my son-in-law walked into my house like he already owned the air I breathed. He said it like he was reading a calendar invite. Tuesday, evict the old man. Wednesday, move in mom and dad. I didn't say a word. I wanted to see how far he'd go. He pulled out his phone and scrolled like he was proud of himself. It's called Sunset Ridge Assisted Living. Nice rooms, social activities, medical care, everything you need. You'll love it there, Jeremiah. Think of it as downsizing. Downsizing. That word landed heavier than any insult I've ever heard. I glanced past him to the wall behind his shoulder, the one lined with photographs, every inch covered with faces, kids who grew up here, who got second chances here. Firefighters, soldiers, doctors, teachers. Faces of the forgotten who'd found a home in this house. He never looked. Not once. He was too busy explaining how practical he was being. 3 bedrooms is too much for one man, he said. My parents deserve space. This is family property. It should stay in the family. I leaned back in my chair and studied him like I used to study troubled students, the ones who thought confidence could cover ignorance. Family, huh? I said. He smiled. Exactly. Real family. I took a slow breath. You sure you know what that word means? He rolled his eyes. Come on, Jeremiah. Don't make this emotional. You raised Naomi, yeah, but she's not your real daughter. It's time to be realistic. Biology matters. That word realistic burned more than all the rest. Because I'd heard it before. From social workers, judges' case files, stamped temporary placement. It always meant you don't belong. I stood up, slow but steady. Ethan, I said, you've been walking through this house for years without ever seeing it. Every mark on that wall came from a life rebuilt here. Every nail, every board has a story that's more real than anything running in your veins. He chuckled softly, the kind of laugh young men give old men when they think they've already won. Jeremiah, I'm just trying to make the smart move. Yeah, I said, nodding. And I'm about to make mine. He didn't understand, not yet. He gathered his paperwork, straightened his jacket, and left. Didn't even close the screen door behind him. The wind caught it and let it bang against the frame. Once, twice, then silence. I looked around at the empty room, my room, and whispered to nobody. He just made the biggest mistake of his life. Because what Ethan didn't see was the army waiting behind those pictures. 38 children, all grown, all mine. And they were about to remind him that blood doesn't make family, love does. After Ethan left, the house went still. It wasn't the quiet kind that soothes you. It was the kind that listens, the kind that holds its breath. I walked down the hallway, coffee cup, still warm in my hand, past the ticking clock and the faint smell of cedar that never leaves these old Georgia houses. The floorboards creaked like they were remembering too. Every step I took, I passed a piece of my life, faces frozen in frames, kids I hadn't seen in years, but still prayed for every night. My wall of names, Pastor Reggie once called it, said it looked like a hall of fame for second chances. I stopped in front of a photo from '98. The fire. Lord, I still smell the smoke when the air gets dry like this. 3 boys trapped in a foster shelter when the wiring caught fire. I was still teaching history back then. I wasn't even a licensed foster parent yet. But I ran in anyway. One of them, Miles Turner, grew up to wear a badge. Now he's the sheriff in this very town. Still calls me Mr. Cole, even though I tell him not to. I brushed the dust off the frame and whispered, "Guess I'm gonna need you again, son." The wall stretched from floor to ceiling. 38 children each one, with a story carved into the wood and paint of this house. Aisha Monroe, who used to hide under the kitchen table when thunderstorms rolled in. She's a pediatric surgeon now, out in Los Angeles. Marcus Lee, who once got expelled for fighting bullies, who teased him for being in foster care, now a federal judge. They all came through these doors broken in some way, and they left stronger. That's what this house did. It didn't just shelter bodies, it rebuilt souls. I moved into the kitchen, the same place where Naomi, my first girl, used to sit doing math homework while I graded papers. Her laughter used to echo off these walls. Now, it was just the hum of the refrigerator and the soft sound of Layla's pencil scratching at the table. Layla Tran, 9 years old, half Vietnamese, the newest heartbeat in this house. She looked up from her workbook, dark eyes wide and curious. "Mr. Cole, are you okay?" she asked. I smiled, trying to keep my voice steady. "Just thinking, sweetheart." She tilted her head. "About the man who came this morning, smart kid. Always listening?" "Yeah," I said. "About him, and about how folks forget what family really means." Layla frowned like she was trying to understand something too big for her years. "Is he gonna take your house?" I knelt down beside her. "He's gonna try," I said softly. "But he won't succeed. Because this house doesn't belong to me. It belongs to every child who ever called it home." She nodded, serious as a little soldier. Then she did something that near broke me. She reached over and put her tiny hand on mine. "I think you're my real family," she whispered. I couldn't answer. My throat was too tight for words. I looked past her out the kitchen window, where the old oak tree stood, the same tree that had seen every barbecue, every Christmas light, every time I'd prayed for a miracle. And then I saw it, the faint scorch mark on the bark, still there after all these years. The fire of '98. I thought about Miles' terrified face that night, about carrying him out in my arms, about how close we all came to not making it. I touched the counter for balance and said to myself, I've fought fires before. I can fight one more. Because this wasn't just about keeping a house. It was about defending a legacy. And deep down, I knew before the week was over, every child that Wall ever held was going to hear the call. Friday evening came dressed like any other golden light, slipping through the blinds, a faint hum from the ceiling fan, the smell of pot roast simmering in the slow cooker. If peace had a sound, that was it, until Ethan Caldwell arrived. Naomi came with him, shoulders drawn, eyes red, like she'd been crying in the car. Behind them trailed Ethan's parents, Robert and Miriam Caldwell, carrying polite smiles and a pecan pie, like they were arriving for Sunday fellowship. And just when I thought maybe it'd be a simple family dinner, I saw the manila folder under Ethan's arm. I'd seen that kind of folder too many times, before legal planned permanent. "Evening, Jeremiah." Ethan said, voice coated in courtesy. "Thought we'd sit down and finalize some things." Finalize. That word again. He spoke it like I was a contract, not a man. Pastor Reggie Hawkins happened to be there too, stopped by to drop off some church mail, and stayed when he saw the table set for 6. He was an old friend, the kind who never intrudes, but always knows when something's about to break. He took a quiet seat near the end, hands folded, eyes alert. Dinner began slow. We passed mashed potatoes, said grace, and danced around small talk, like it could hold us together. Then Ethan cleared his throat. So he said, sliding that folder onto the table, between the cornbread and the casserole, "I wanted to share what we've been working on. A real solution for everyone." Naomi froze mid-bite. "Ethan, please, sweetheart, let me finish." He spread out papers, glossy brochures of assisted living facilities, Sunset Ridge, Magnolia Haven, Bright Horizons, the same smiling old folks on every page. Robert Caldwell shifted uncomfortably. "Son, your mother and I didn't want to impose." Ethan cut him off with a smile. "Dad, it's not an imposition. It's practical. Mr. Cole's got too much space and not enough help. This way he'll be cared for, and you and Mom can finally settle somewhere comfortable." Miriam's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Her eyes flicked toward me, soft, almost apologetic. I stayed silent, letting him keep digging. He went on, his tone turning smug, his words smooth as poison. "I know this is emotional, but we need to be realistic. Mr. Cole, you've had a good run here, but it's time to transition. Naomi and I will handle the details. We've already spoken to the facility director. They're expecting you next month." Naomi whispered, barely audible. "You what?" Ethan ignored her. "This home will stay in the family," he said. "Real family. That's what matters." And there it was, the line that turned the air cold. I set down my fork. "Real family?" I asked, slow and steady. Ethan nodded. "You raised Naomi, sure, and we appreciate that. But she's not your biological daughter. And when you're gone, this house should go to blood relatives, people who understand legacy." The room went silent. You could hear the clock ticking in the hallway, steady as a heartbeat. Naomi's chair scraped back suddenly. "Ethan, stop it. You don't get to talk to my father like that." He didn't even look at her, just smiled like a man correcting a child. "I'm talking about facts, honey. I'm not being cruel. It's just time to be practical." That's when Pastor Reggie's chair shifted. He didn't speak, but I saw the phone in his lap screen lit. He'd pressed record, quiet witness to what was happening. I looked at Ethan, really looked at the expensive suit, the manicured arrogance, the way he mistook power for rightness. And for the first time that night, I felt calm. "Ethan," I said, my voice even, "when you say real family, remember this moment, 'cause one day you'll see what real family looks like." He smirked, not catching it. "Jeremiah, I'm just trying to do what's best for everyone." "No," I said. "You're trying to take something that was never yours." His father cleared his throat, uneasy. "Son, maybe we should." But Ethan was already standing. The movers are scheduled for next Tuesday. We'll start with the guest room. And that's when I interrupted. Not with words, but with a look. The kind that ends conversations. Naomi's voice cracked. Dad, I'm so sorry. I touched her hand. Don't be, you didn't do this. She started crying softly, and Miriam reached for her napkin, dabbing her own eyes now. The mother's heart in her was waking up late, but not too late. Ethan gathered his folder and started for the door. Think it over, he said. You'll see, it's the logical choice. When the screen door slammed, the silence that followed was heavy, like the air after thunder. Pastor Reggie broke it first. You want me to keep that recording, Jeremiah? I nodded once. Keep it safe. Then I stood, walked to the old hutch in the corner, and pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside was a wooden box I hadn't opened in years. A box full of names, letters, and phone numbers, 38 lives that had once depended on me. I ran my hand over the lid, feeling the weight of it. It's time, I said. I lifted the phone from my pocket and dialed the first number. Somewhere out there, a grown child was about to hear my voice again. And when they did, Ethan Caldwell's world was going to change forever. The night after that dinner, I sat alone in my study, the same small room where I used to grade papers, patch knees, and pray for kids who didn't believe in miracles yet. The smell of paper and cedar still clung to the air. On my desk sat the old wooden box. Its hinges creaked when I opened it, like it knew why it had been woken up. Inside were decades of memories, faded letters, graduation invitations, wedding photos, and business cards, so worn the ink had started to fade. Some had call signs instead of names. Some had embossed gold lettering. Others were handwritten on scraps of notebook paper. Each one carried a story. I picked up the first card. Dr. Aisha Monroe, Pediatric Surgery, Los Angeles Children's Hospital. Her handwriting on the back said, for anything, anytime. Love you, Daddy Cole. I smiled. She always did call me that, even after she earned her first paycheck and tried to send me half of it. The next one, Marcus Lee, Federal Judge, Washington, D.C. Lord, I still remember the day he stood in front of that bench, the boy who once hid behind his textbooks so nobody would see the bruises. I shuffled through dozens of names, hundreds of memories, and for a moment, the room didn't feel so empty anymore. But still, I hesitated. It had been years since I'd called most of them. What if they'd moved on? What if I was just a chapter they'd closed? I ran my thumb over the edge of the phone and whispered, You raised them to stand tall. Jeremiah. Time to see if they still do. The first call went to voicemail, then the second, then the third. I left gentle messages, didn't beg, didn't guilt, just said, Hey, it's Mr. Cole. Something's come up, and I could use a little family around here. After the fifth unanswered call, the silence began to hurt. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe I was just an old man hanging on to ghosts. That's when the phone rang. Unknown number. Georgia area code. Mr. Cole? A woman's voice came through, warm and breathless, like she'd been running. It's Angela Ross. Remember me? Used to be your caseworker back in the 90s. I leaned back, surprised. Angela Ross. You still in social work? Still fighting the good fight? She said with a tired laugh. I heard what's happening. Miles Turner, your boy who's sheriff now, he called me. Said your son-in-law's trying to push you into assisted living. I sighed. Word travels fast in Willow Creek. Angela's tone changed, firm, protective. You listen to me, Jeremiah. I've watched those kids you raised grow into some of the strongest men and women I've ever met. You think they'd let you go down without a fight? Just make the call. They'll come. They always do. I felt something shift inside me, that old spark of purpose I thought had burned out years ago. "All right, Angela," I said softly. "Let's see if you're right." I scrolled to Aisha's number, the same one she'd written on a napkin 10 years ago, promising, "If you ever need me, I'll be there." My thumb hovered for a moment. Then I pressed call. The ring only lasted 2 beats. Then came a familiar, confident voice from the other end. "Daddy Cole." "You okay?" My throat tightened. "I've been better, sweetheart." "What happened?" "My son-in-law thinks I belong in assisted living. Says my house ought to go to his parents." Silence. Then low and sharp. "He thinks what?" I could hear her breathing quicken, the surgeon's composure fading into the daughter's fury. "Don't you worry," she said finally. "Just sit tight. I'll handle the flights." Before I could answer, she hung up. A second later, my phone buzzed again. A message notification. "Incoming call. Dr. Aisha Monroe. Los Angeles." I smiled for the first time in days. Looks like the first one's coming home. Outside the porch, light flickered the same way it always did when the night wind hit the wires. But this time, it felt different, like the house knew help was on the way. Sunday morning came, with that soft, holy hush that floats over Willow Creek before church bells start ringing. The air smelled of pine and dew, and the sky stretched wide like a promise. I'd been up since dawn, polishing my old shoes, ironing the same gray shirt I've worn to Sunday service for 20 years. Some habits keep a man steady when the world tries to tilt him off balance. Naomi called from the car. "We're on our way, Daddy," she said, voice small. I could hear Ethan in the background giving directions, like he was running a meeting. My gut tightened. I told myself to stay calm. Church was sacred ground. Surely even Ethan would show a little grace in God's house. I was wrong. By the time I got to Willow Creek Baptist, the parking lot was already full. Families unloading casseroles for the charity luncheon, old men in pressed suits, shaking hands, children chasing each other through the grass. That church had seen me through births, funerals, weddings, and storms. The thought of anything ugly happening there made my chest ache. Pastor Reggie Hawkins stood by the front steps, sunlight glinting off his glasses. "Morning, Jeremiah," he said with that calm warmth that never failed to settle me. "You doing all right?" I've seen better weeks," I said. He chuckled softly. "Then let's pray. It gets better before it gets worse." He didn't know yet, but he would. We filed into the fellowship hall after service for the charity luncheon. Long tables covered with potluck dishes, laughter filling the air, the smell of baked chicken and green bean casserole. The band played a soft gospel tune in the background. It was peaceful, simple, the kind of peace only small-town churches know. And then right in the middle of it, Ethan Caldwell stood up. He tapped his glass with a spoon, the sound sharp enough to slice through the laughter. Conversations faded. The band fell silent. Dozens of heads turned. "Good afternoon, everyone," he said, smiling that polished corporate smile. "I hope you'll excuse the interruption, but I have an important announcement about Mr. Jeremiah Cole." Every eye in that room swung toward me. I froze coffee halfway to my lips. Naomi's hand slipped under the table, gripping mine tight. Ethan continued, his tone calm, rehearsed. "As many of you know, Mr. Cole has lived alone for quite some time. He's had an incredible life of service. A pillar of this community, fostered so many children." He paused just long enough to make it sound respectful. "But now it's time for him to rest. My wife and I have found a wonderful assisted living facility for him in Macon, Sunset Ridge. He'll be moving there next month." The room went utterly still. The air seemed to drop 10 degrees. I could see faces of people I'd known for decades, the Hendersons, the Parkers, Old Mr. Dillard from the choir, staring in confusion. Whispering started to ripple through the tables. Assisted living, someone muttered. Pastor Reggie's eyes narrowed. Ethan, he said quietly, I think maybe this isn't the place. Ethan raised a hand, cutting him off, as if he were running a board meeting. Please, Pastor. This concerns our whole congregation. Mr. Cole has been generous to so many, but it's time for his family to step in and take care of him properly. He deserves comfort and safety in his later years. He looked around the room, smiling benevolently, as if expecting applause, but the only sound was the faint clink of silverware. Naomi's face was pale as paper. Ethan, stop. Please, he ignored her. Now I know this is hard to hear. Change always is. But I think we can all agree it's time for practicality. This home he's living in, big, beautiful, but far too much for one person, will now serve my parents who are moving in next week. It keeps the property in the family and ensures everyone's well cared for. He said it like it was charity, like he'd just donated me to a nursing home for my own good. The word family hung heavy in the air, echoing like a curse. Mrs. Henderson, a frail woman in her 80s, who'd known me since my teaching days, stood up slow but steady. Excuse me, young man, she said, voice trembling but clear. I've watched Jeremiah raise more children than some folks will ever meet. He's as strong today as he's ever been. How dare you talk about him like he's a burden? A murmur of agreement swept through the crowd. Ethan's smile flickered. Ma'am, I respect your feelings, but emotions don't change reality. Mr. Cole's foster care work ended years ago. Those children have their own lives now. He's alone, and it's time to transition responsibly. Pastor Reggie stepped forward, voice calm but firm. Ethan's son, you're talking about a man who's given more to this town than anyone here. Let's keep some respect in this room. Ethan turned toward him, jaw tight. Pastor, with all due respect, respect doesn't mean denial. We can't hold on to the past forever. Naomi stood then, tears in her eyes. You don't get it, Ethan. Those children are his family. The entire hall went silent again. I could see Miriam, Ethan's mother, watching her son now, not with pride, but with something close to horror. Robert. His father shifted in his chair, rubbing his temples. Ethan exhaled sharply, trying to reclaim control. I'm just trying to do what's best for everyone. Dad, Mom, tell them. This is what we agreed makes sense. Miriam's voice came out soft, hesitant. Ethan, we didn't agree to this. We just said we'd help, if Jeremiah wanted it. Ethan's jaw clenched. Mom, please, let me handle it. He turned back to me, all false sympathy gone. Jeremiah, you've done good work. But now it's time to let the next generation take over. We'll handle the property, and you can focus on enjoying your golden years. I stood slowly. My knees cracked, but my voice didn't shake. Ethan, I said you sure do love that word family. You've used it 3 times since you stood up. You keep saying it, like it means ownership. He blinked, caught off guard. I took a step forward, feeling every eye in the hall on me. Let me tell you something about family. Family ain't who inherits your house when you die. It's who shows up when your world catches fire and they run in without asking. It's the kids who grew up in your kitchen, learning how to believe in themselves again. It's people who remember who you were when the world forgot. The crowd was quiet. Even the children had stopped fidgeting. Ethan's voice came out tight. This isn't about emotion, Jeremiah. It's about practicality. No, I said. It's about decency. And you just lost yours. Pastor Reggie took a slow step forward, eyes glimmering, like he'd seen this moment in prayer, long before it happened. Son, he said gently to me, maybe it's time to make your own announcement. I looked at him, then at Ethan, and then at Naomi, her hands trembling, her eyes begging me not to crumble. I turned back to the crowd and said loud enough for the whole room to hear, "You're right, Ethan. It's time for decisions. But I'll make mine soon, and you'll want to be there when I do." The room erupted in murmurs, but I didn't stay to hear them. I walked out, my shoes echoing against the tile floor, the sound steady, defiant. Outside, the church bell rang twice, clear, sharp, final. When I reached my truck, I looked back at the steeple piercing the sky and whispered to myself, "You wanted an audience, Ethan. I'll give you one you'll never forget." The Monday after that church humiliation, the air in Willow Creek felt different. The town had seen things that couldn't be unseen. Gossip travels fast, in a place where people still wave at each other from porches, and by breakfast the story had already spread. Ethan Caldwell tried to ship Jeremiah Cole off to a nursing home, they whispered at the diner, in front of the whole congregation. I didn't go out that day. I sat on the porch with a thermos of coffee, watching the mist crawl off the pines, listening to the mockingbirds argue. My old house creaked, like it was waiting for something, maybe me, maybe the storm that was about to roll in. The first call came at 8:17 a.m. "Mr. Cole." A calm, clipped voice. "Military? This is Captain Carter Hayes, U.S. Navy. You remember me? Hard to forget the kid who used to line up his toy soldiers on my porch rail." He laughed, short and proud. "Sir, I just saw a video someone posted from the church. My sister still lives in town. She said you were humiliated in front of half the county." "I wouldn't call it humiliation," I said quietly, "just a misunderstanding of what family means." "Well," he said, "if that man thinks you're alone, he's in for a shock. I've got a weekend pass coming up. I'll be home Friday. I think it's time your real family showed up." Before I could respond, another beep came through. "Incoming call." I switched lines. "Jeremiah Cole." The voice was smooth, deliberate. "Marcus Lee, my federal judge from D.C. "Marcus," I said, smiling despite myself. "Haven't heard that voice since you were a scared 17-year-old, begging me not to tell your probation officer about the fight behind the gym." He chuckled softly. "You told me to channel my anger into something that could change the system instead of breaking it. Must I did. Now, I sit on the other side of the bench." Then, his tone hardened. "I saw Ethan's stunt online. Someone filmed the whole thing. You okay?" "I'm fine, son." "No, sir. You're not fine. Not until we make it right. That man's planning something illegal, coercion of an elder, potential fraud, if he tries to transfer property under pressure. I've already called a colleague at the Georgia bar. We're drafting a statement just in case." "Marcus," I said, "I don't want a courtroom war." He paused. "Then we'll give him something better. The truth loud enough that everyone in town hears it." Before I could answer, another call lit up the screen. This time, a number from Los Angeles. "Daddy Cole," said Aisha Monroe, her voice quick and bright as sunlight through a hospital window. "You sitting down? Depends on why you're asking. I just booked a flight. Thursday night. I'll land in Atlanta at 8:40 p.m. And before you argue, it's not up for discussion. Aisha, no. You don't get to fight this alone. You fought for all of us. Now, it's our turn." The call dropped. I stared at the phone. 3 calls in 2 hours. 35 children still unaccounted for, but I felt something stirring in my chest. That ache of purpose I thought I'd buried with time. Then around noon, the sheriff's cruiser pulled into my driveway. Deputy Miles Turner stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, uniform crisp. He was the boy from the fire, the one I'd carried out of the orphanage back in '98. His eyes softened when he saw me. "Morning, Mr. Cole," he said. "Morning, Sheriff." Mind if I sit? Porch swings always open. He settled beside me, the wood groaning under his weight. We watched a cardinal land on the fence, both of us, too quiet for a moment. I heard what happened at the church, he said finally. Ethan's walking around like he's king of this town. But folks saw the truth. They saw Moen trying to take what isn't his. I shrugged. Let God handle judgment. I'll handle the rest. He nodded, then leaned forward. You planning something, Mr. Cole? I didn't answer directly. Just reaching out to family. Miles grinned. Then you'll be needing a little order when they start showing up. I've got my deputies on alert. Saturday we'll block off Meadow Lane for family traffic. Make sure no trouble starts. You do that for me. He looked at me, steady as a mountain. You saved my life when I was 8. You think I'd forget that, sir? I wear this badge because of you. Whatever happens Saturday, the law's on your side. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window watching headlights glide across the far-off highway. One by one, I wrote messages, not begging, just reminding. You've got a home here. Always did. By dawn, replies started to flood in. From Chicago. On my way, Mr. C, I owe you everything. From Houston? Tell Ethan I said hi. Actually, don't. I'll tell him myself. From Boston, I'll be there Friday. Bringing my wife and kids. They need to meet the man who taught me family isn't blood. Each message felt like another brick in a wall Ethan could never climb. By Wednesday, Pastor Reggie came by holding a paper cup of coffee and a cautious smile. Jeremiah, he said, you sure you know what you're stirring up? Half the town's buzzing about your kids coming back. Not kids anymore, I said. Grown men and women, strong ones. They just need a reason to remember where they came from. So, he looked at me over his glasses. You planning to embarrass Ethan? I shook my head. I'm planning to educate him. Thursday morning, I stood at the kitchen counter, phone buzzing nonstop. Flights booked, cars rented, lives rearranged. These were people with surgeries scheduled, court cases, pending board meetings, military duty, and yet they were coming. Every single one who could. Angela Ross called again. That afternoon. You seeing it now? She asked. They remember. They always remember the hands that pulled them out. I see it, I said. My voice cracked a little. I just didn't think they'd come so fast. They've been waiting for a chance to repay what you gave them, she said gently. You taught them to fight for what's right. Now, they get to fight for you. I hung up and stepped outside. The wind carried the smell of pine and far-off rain. It felt like the earth itself was bracing. By sunset, I had texts from 21 confirmed arrivals. More were on the road. The group chat buzzed with excitement. Doctors, lawyers, soldiers, engineers. Each one had a story, each one, a piece of this house's soul. Then came a message from Aisha ETA, Friday 8:40 p.m. Marcus lands an hour later. Carter's convoy leaving Jacksonville. Miles coordinating local police. We're coming home. I looked at that screen, and my old heart thumped like a drum. I could almost see it already, headlights stretching across America, like fireflies, all heading toward this small Georgia town. I whispered, all right then, let's finish what we started. Inside, the phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. A simple line of text that made me laugh out loud for the first time in days. Bring your lawn chairs. Mr. Cole. Saturday's gonna be one for the history books. I stepped onto the porch, the evening air heavy with promise. Out there somewhere across the country, 38 grown souls were coming home. And when they arrived, Ethan Caldwell was about to find out what happens when a man mistakes kindness for weakness. The camera of memory zoomed out in my mind, across highways and cities, a map of America glowing with tiny moving lights, all converging toward one small pin in Georgia. Willow Creek, my home. Friday night came soft and heavy, the way southern nights do, when the humidity wraps itself around you like memory. The cicadas were singing somewhere, out past the pecan trees, and the air smelled faintly of rain and red clay. I'd been watching the clock all day, trying not to. Every hour seemed to stretch longer than the one before. They were coming. By late afternoon, messages were flying in faster than I could answer. 2 hours out. Dad. Flight landed. Driving straight from Atlanta. Cars had already begun to fill the street. A black sedan parked under the magnolia tree. Then, a white SUV. Then 2 pickup trucks with out-of-state plates. Each time I heard tires crunch on gravel, I felt something inside me unclench, like a piece of my heart was coming home, one vehicle at a time. I stood on the porch when the first headlights swung into the driveway. The door opened, and a woman stepped out. Tall, elegant scrubs, still wrinkled from a long shift, her hair tied back in a bun. Aisha Monroe. Dr. Monroe now, but still the girl who used to make paper stethoscopes out of construction paper at my kitchen table. Daddy Cole, she said softly, smiling through tired eyes. I made it home. My throat closed up. I opened my arms and she walked straight into them. The smell of hospital soap and exhaustion clung to her, but so did something stronger, loyalty. She stepped back, studying me the way doctors do, eyes scanning for signs of wear. You look thinner, she said. I'm older, I answered. She chuckled. Not that much. Behind her came another car and another. Marcus Lee in a dark suit, even though it was pushing 90 degrees. He stepped out, phone in one hand, a thick folder in the other. Legal backup, sir, he said, tapping the file with a grin. Just in case. Carter Hayes arrived not long after, still carrying the rigid posture of a Navy man even out of uniform. He saluted me like he was reporting for duty. Permission to stand watch, Mr. Cole. Always granted, I said. By 7 o'clock, the yard looked like a family reunion, and a board meeting collided. Laughter mingled with disbelief. Hugs turned into tears. People who hadn't seen each other in 20 years stood shoulder to shoulder, telling stories about the house that had saved them. Inside the living room, buzzed with voices. Dr. Monroe put a pot of coffee on, while Marcus set up his laptop. Carter checked the locks on the door's old habits. Pastor Reggie had stopped by too, uninvited, but not unwelcome. He stood in the corner, quiet as prayer, just watching this miracle unfold. Naomi sat near the kitchen table, her fingers tracing the wood grain, her wedding ring absent for the first time. She looked lost, like someone who'd been holding her breath too long. I sat down beside her. You all right, baby? Her voice cracked. No, Daddy, I'm not. I'm ashamed. I waited. She swallowed hard. I let him talk to you like that. I let him humiliate you in church. I should have stood up sooner. Naomi. She shook her head, tears falling fast now. I kept thinking if I stayed quiet, I could keep my marriage together. That if I just waited, he'd come to his senses. But all I did was help him hurt you. I took her hands, same hands I'd taught to hold a pencil, to play piano, to plant tomatoes in the back garden. You didn't help him, sweetheart. You loved him. And sometimes love blinds us to what it doesn't deserve. Her lip trembled. I don't know if I can forgive him. You can, I said softly, but you don't have to go back. She looked up, eyes glistening. What if I lose everything? Oh, you can't lose what was never real, baby, I whispered. You just found what's true. We sat there a long while, just breathing in the quiet hum of the house, the sound of people moving and laughing in the other room. When Naomi finally stood, she looked lighter, steadier. She kissed my forehead. I'm staying here tonight. if that's all right. It's more than all right, I said. It's home. Later, when the noise had softened to murmurs and laughter from the porch, I went to my study. The wooden box still sat there empty now, its contents spread across the country in human form. I took out a sheet of paper and a pen, the kind of pen I used to grade essays with. My handwriting wasn't as steady as it once was, but the words came clear. To whoever finds this letter, when I'm gone, this house isn't worth much on paper, but it's worth everything in people. If you ever doubt the power of love, look at these walls. They held lives together. They're still holding mine. If I don't wake up tomorrow, know this: I didn't leave empty. I left surrounded. Jeremiah Cole. I folded the note and slid it into the top drawer of my desk. Not out of fear, but peace. Sometimes a man writes to the future just to say he understood the past. Around 10 o'clock, a low rumble rolled across the horizon. Not thunder, but engines. More headlights, more faces. One after another, they poured into the driveway: teachers, nurses, engineers, a firefighter from Atlanta, a small business owner from Tennessee. 38 souls, every one of them answering the same unspoken call. Miles Turner, now Sheriff Turner, arrived last, uniform-pressed, cruiser lights flashing briefly as he pulled in. He walked up the porch steps and tipped his hat. "Evening, Mr. Cole. Thought you could use some crowd control." I smiled. "You and the Lord both showed up, right on time." He nodded toward the house. "They're all parked along Willow Lane. I told the deputies to keep the road clear. Tomorrow morning, nobody gets in or out without your say-so." Inside, Dr. Monroe was setting up a table of coffee and sandwiches like a field medic. "You'd think I was prepping for surgery," she joked. Marcus looked up from his laptop. "Legally speaking, it kind of is. We're about to remove a tumor named Ethan Caldwell." Everyone laughed, not cruelly, but with the weary relief of people who'd been waiting decades to give something back. By midnight, the laughter faded to tired whispers. Some slept on couches, some on air mattresses. The house was full again, like it had been 20 years ago. Breathing. Alive. I sat by the window one last time, the glow from the porch light helloing the oak tree outside. The night was still, but under it ran a current, the hum of faith, a family of unfinished business. In the silence, I whispered to the dark, "You picked the wrong old man to push Ethan. Tomorrow you'll learn the difference between being alone and being surrounded." A gust of wind brushed the porch screen, and I thought I heard the faint sound of a woman's voice outside. "Daddy Cole," it said, soft as wind through leaves. I smiled, closed my eyes, and whispered back, "Welcome home, sweetheart." The morning light came early that day, sharp gold and serious. It cut through the curtains like a summons. I hadn't slept more than a few hours, but I didn't feel tired. I felt ready. From my bedroom window, I could see the whole street. Meadow Lane, usually quiet enough to hear the church bells 3 blocks away, was already lined with cars. The kind of cars that told stories, some old pickup trucks that had seen better days, others brand new sedans and SUVs that gleamed like mirrors in the sun. 38 of them. 38 children who had once arrived with nothing and now came home with everything. In the kitchen, Dr. Aisha Monroe was brewing coffee like she was running an emergency room. Marcus Lee, still in his suit from the night before, sat at the table going over legal documents, reading every line twice. Captain Carter Hayes stood outside on the porch, arms folded, scanning the street like he was guarding the Pentagon. Naomi was at the stove, flipping pancakes, her eyes calmer than they'd been in weeks. She was humming softly something her mother used to sing before the world turned hard. I stopped in the doorway, just watching her for a moment. You remember when you used to burn the batter every Saturday? I said. She smiled, eyes glinting. You remember when you used to eat it anyway? We both laughed, quiet easy. For a second we could have been back in 2002, before men like Ethan learned how to break peace for profit. By 8 o'clock, the house was full of life. Kids of my grown children ran through the yard, their laughter sharp and sweet. The adults were in the driveway forming ranks, like soldiers without needing orders. Aisha in her white coat, Marcus in his charcoal gray suit, Carter in crisp navy slacks with medals pinned to his chest. Angela Ross stood beside them, the social worker turned guardian angel, holding a clipboard like she'd never retired. Then came the unmistakable sound, the low growl of a diesel engine. A moving truck turned the corner onto Meadow Lane. Here we go, Marcus murmured. Moments later, Ethan Caldwell's silver pickup appeared behind it. He drove slow, scanning the street with narrowing eyes. His father, Robert, was in the passenger seat too, stiff as stone. His mother, Miriam, sat in the back, her hands folded tight in her lap. The moving truck driver stopped short. There was no way through. Both sides of the street were lined solid with vehicles, people, and signs. Ethan's mouth dropped open. I stepped out onto the porch, buttoning my cleanest shirt, not because I wanted to look strong, but because dignity deserves its uniform. The air carried that late autumn scent, wood smoke pine, and something electric like truth about to strike. Dr. Monroe stepped forward, the morning sun flashing off the stethoscope draped around her neck. She looked every inch the surgeon she'd fought to become. Mr. Caldwell, she called out, her voice steady, commanding. You must be Ethan. Ethan blinked, taken aback. Who are you, Dr. Aisha Monroe? She said, folding her arms. One of Jeremiah's daughters. His what? Before he could scoff, Marcus Lee stepped up beside her. Judge Marcus Lee, United States Federal Court, Washington, D.C. I'm another one. Ethan's brow furrowed confusion, flashing to panic. Then Carter Hayes moved to join them, polished shoes, glinting medals catching the light. Captain Carter Hayes, U.S. Navy. Angela Ross raised her clipboard and smiled. And I'm the woman who approved their placements 30 years ago. Every single one of them. Ethan took a step back, scanning the crowd. Behind the first row, more stepped forward. Nurses, engineers, professors, entrepreneurs, police officers, teachers. Each one held a small sign with their name and title. Dr. Aisha Monroe, pediatric surgeon. Judge Marcus Lee, Federal Court. Captain Carter Hayes, U.S. Navy. Professor Lydia Green, University of Texas. Deputy Miles Turner, Willow Creek Sheriff's Office. 38 names, 38 lives. Ethan's father whispered, Good Lord. The sound of shutters clicking echoed from neighbors' porches. Cell phones recording, eyes wide. Word had spread. The entire block was watching. I stepped down from the porch. The crowd parted to let me through. Morning, Ethan, I said, voice calm. Looks like you brought company. He cleared his throat. Jeremiah, this is ridiculous. What's all this family? I said simply. Family. He gestured toward the people behind me. These are strangers. Dr. Monroe's tone sharpened. Strangers? That stranger you're talking about taught me how to pray when I couldn't sleep, because I thought monsters were real. He fixed my science fair project at midnight, drove me to every college interview I couldn't afford to miss. I owe my whole damn life to this man. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ethan turned red. This is some sort of stunt. Marcus adjusted his tie. You could call it that. I call it evidence. He lifted a folder. See, in Georgia, attempting to coerce or intimidate an elderly person into surrendering property is a crime, punishable by imprisonment actually. Miles Turner stepped forward, sheriff badge catching the light. He's right. And since I'm the law here, I suggest you tread carefully. The moving truck driver, sensing danger, muttered something about rescheduling and quietly backed the truck out. The sound of the gears grinding in reverse echoed like retreat. Ethan looked from the truck to me, sweat beading on his forehead. "You set this up," he hissed. "No," I said. "You did. You just forgot to check who I really am before you tried to erase me." Miriam, his mother, stepped out of the truck, now eyes full of regret. "Ethan, stop this. For God's sake, son. Look around you." Robert followed, placing a hand on his wife's shoulder. "He's right, Ethan. This isn't a battle you can win." But Ethan was too far gone. Pride had him by the throat. "This house belongs to Naomi and me," he shouted. "You're just a foster parent, a temporary guardian." That was when Naomi stepped forward from behind me, her voice trembling but fierce. "You're wrong," she said. "He's not temporary. He's the only father I've ever had." The air split open with the sound of applause, raw, spontaneous, powerful. My 38 children clapped their palms, echoing like thunder in a revival tent. Ethan's words crumbled in his mouth. He stood there, face pale, lost among all that sound. I stepped closer, lowering my voice, so only he could hear. "You wanted to show me what real family looks like. Take a good look now." He turned his head, and what he saw wasn't just a crowd. It was a lifetime of gratitude, people who'd been bruised, abandoned, forgotten, but who'd found their strength under my roof. His mother, Miriam, began to cry. "Oh, Lord, Jeremiah, I'm so sorry for what he's done." I placed a hand on her shoulder. "You raised a good man somewhere under all that ambition. Maybe he just forgot who he was for a while." She nodded, sobbing. Ethan's voice broke then. I didn't mean." Before he could finish, a sudden breeze swept through the yard, rustling the signs, lifting the edge of my shirt. For a moment, everything went still. The cars, the crowd, even the cicadas. And I said, "You see, son, this isn't just a house. It's a promise that no child is ever too lost to come home again." Ethan dropped his gaze. The fight left his shoulders. Miriam looked at him, whispering, "Son, you've been fighting the wrong man." The air that morning could have been cut with a blade, too still, too heavy, for the words waiting to be spoken. The whole of Willow Creek seemed to have gathered outside my house. Folks lined the sidewalk, whispering, recording on their phones. It wasn't gossip anymore. It was history in the making. Ethan Caldwell stood on my driveway, his confidence leaking out of him one twitch at a time. Sweat glistened at his hairline, despite the crisp fall breeze. His eyes darted between the sea of faces, my family, 38 men and women. He didn't recognize, but suddenly feared. Pastor Reggie had arrived too. He moved through the crowd with that slow dignity that comes from carrying both faith and age with grace. He stopped beside me, his Bible tucked under one arm. "You sure you want to handle this out here?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Truth doesn't hide in shadows, Reggie. It stands where everyone can see it." He gave a small nod. "Then, let it stand." Ethan's mother, Miriam, had tears streaking her cheeks. "Ethan, please," she said, voice trembling. "Just stop this. Listen to yourself." But he wouldn't meet her eyes. He pointed at me instead, his voice cracking like a whip against his own pride. "This isn't right. He's manipulating all of you. They're not his kids. They're charity cases." That word charity hit like a slap. The crowd stirred. I could feel the anger rising, not the wild kind, but the righteous kind that comes from people who've spent their lives earning their place in the world. Dr. Aisha Monroe stepped forward, her voice cool as a scalpel. You think charity raised me, Mr. Caldwell. I perform pediatric surgeries that save lives every week. You think charity put me through medical school. Before Ethan could speak, another voice joined in. Marcus Lee, the judge, adjusted his tie and said evenly, Mr. Caldwell, I'd advise you to be careful what you say next. The state of Georgia doesn't take kindly to anyone trying to exploit or coerce a senior citizen into giving up property. It's called financial elder abuse, felony offense. The murmurs grew louder. Ethan turned pale. You can't threaten me. Miles Turner, still in uniform, lifted a hand. Ain't nobody threatening you, son. We're just reminding you what the law looks like when it shows up wearing faces you never expected. For a moment, nobody spoke. Even the wind seemed to pause. Then I took a slow step forward, my shoes crunching against the gravel. Ethan, I said quietly, I don't want to see you in handcuffs. That's not who I am. I don't fight with laws and courts. I fight with the truth. And here's the truth. Every person you see behind me is my child. Not by blood, not by paperwork, but by choice. And choice is the purest form of love there is. He opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. I kept going. You see, blood's a lottery. You don't earn it. You're born into it. But love's a decision. It's what you do at 2 a.m. when a child's got a fever and no one else to call. It's the second job you take so she can have new shoes. It's the nights you pray for someone who doesn't believe they deserve saving. My voice cracked then, but I didn't care. That's family, Ethan. And if you can't see that, then you're not building a family. You're building a transaction. A ripple of quiet agreement spread through the crowd. Ethan's father, Robert, took a hesitant step forward. Son, he said, I think maybe it's time to apologize. But Ethan only shook his head, backing away like a trapped animal. No, this is insane. He's turning everyone against me. Naomi stepped out from behind the group. Her hands trembled, but her eyes burned with something stronger than fear. You did that yourself, Ethan. He froze. Naomi, you humiliated my father in front of our church. You lied to me about moving your parents in. You tried to take his home, our home, without a shred of respect. You think love is about ownership, but it's not. It's about honor. And you don't have any left. The words hit him like stones, clean and final. He tried to reach for her hand, but she pulled it back. Don't, she said. Not today. For a moment he just stood there, a man stripped bare, surrounded by everything he couldn't buy or bully. Then from somewhere in the crowd, a small voice called out, Mr. Cole. It was Layla Tran, the youngest one, standing by the porch steps, in her little pink dress. She was holding a handmade sign in both hands. The letters were shaky, but bold. Family is who stays. The crowd went silent again. I felt tears sting my eyes. That tiny girl, the newest heartbeat in this old house, had just said more truth in 3 words than most adults say in a lifetime. Ethan stared at her, then at me. You taught her that. I nodded. No. She learned it by watching. He looked around once more, desperate for an ally. But even his parents couldn't meet his gaze. That's when Marcus, the judge, stepped forward again. Mr. Caldwell, he said, his tone crisp, official, but not cruel. Given your actions and intent, I could press charges on behalf of Mr. Cole under Georgia Code, Bible 30058. But I won't, because the man you tried to rob just asked us not to. Ethan blinked. What? I looked at Marcus, then at Ethan. Let him go, I said. He's already lost more than he knows. The crowd murmured in surprise. I turned to Miriam and Robert, who were both crying now. You raised him to be better. Maybe he just forgot for a while. He'll find his way back in time. Miriam covered her mouth with a shaking hand. I don't know how to thank you for showing us grace after what he's done. Just remember it, I said softly. That's enough. The tension broke like a dam. People clapped not in triumph, but in relief, a sound like release, like forgiveness, settling over the air. Ethan didn't speak. He just turned shoulders slumped and walked toward his truck. As he passed Layla, he stopped. For a second his face softened. He looked at her sign, then at me. And for the first time, I saw the boy buried somewhere deep inside the man, the one who might still be saved if someone gave him the chance. He climbed into his truck, started the engine, and drove away slow. No one stopped him. No one needed to. As the crowd began to disperse, I turned to Pastor Reggie, who'd been silent the whole time. He was smiling not wide, but deep, like a man who'd just witnessed proof of what he'd preached for 40 years. You handled that better than most judges would have, he said. Marcus did the judging, I replied. I just did the forgiving. By afternoon, videos had already hit the internet. Foster father defends home with his 38 children. That was the headline. I saw myself on a stranger's phone, standing in the sunlight surrounded by the people I loved. And when I watched Layla's sign appear in the frame, family is who stays, I couldn't hold the tears back anymore. Because that's when I realized Ethan hadn't lost everything. He'd given me back something I didn't even know. I'd misplaced the proof that what I'd built still stood stronger than ever. It's been 6 months since that morning. 6 months since 38 of my children stood shoulder to shoulder on my lawn and reminded an entire town what family really means. Willow Creek has never been the same. Neither have I. Some mornings when the fog sits low over the fields, I still hear the faint echoes of that day, the hum of car engines, the sound of applause, Layla's little voice shouting, "Family is who stays." I've lived 69 years, and I can tell you that moment will follow me to my grave. But what came after was something I could never have imagined. The video of the confrontation spread across social media like wildfire. Within 24 hours, the Willow Creek redemption, that's what people started calling it, hit 1 million views. News stations came knocking. Reporters called from Atlanta, New York, even overseas. But I didn't want fame. I wanted peace. Instead of interviews, I asked folks to donate to the foster care system. Within 2 weeks, we'd raised over $180,000. The county used that money to build a new emergency home for foster kids, the first of its kind in 3 decades. They named it the Cole Home Fund. The plaque out front reads, "For every child who ever needed a place to belong. Thanks to Jeremiah Cole and his family." Yeah, that one still makes me cry. But that's not all. Pastor Reggie told me the Sunday after everything went viral, the church was standing room only. Folks who hadn't set foot in a pew for 20 years came back just to hear him preach about what had happened. He said my story reminded people that faith ain't about sermons, it's about showing up when it counts. Naomi moved back home that same week. She filed for divorce quietly, no drama, no shouting. When I asked her if she was sure, she said, "Daddy, I've never been more sure of anything in my life." She took little Layla's hand in hers and added, "You spent your whole life teaching kids they deserve love." I think it's time I started believing that for myself. They stayed in the room that used to be hers as a child, the one with the blue curtains and the crack in the window pane I could never bring myself to fix. I used to think that crack made the house imperfect. Now I know it made the light hit differently. Layla called me Grandpa Cole. From that day forward, she'd help me feed the chickens in the morning, plant tomatoes in the garden, and sit on the porch every evening while I told her stories about her aunties and uncles. The 38 grown children scattered across America who still called me Dad. Sometimes she'd look up at me and say, "Do you think I'll be like them when I grow up?" And I'd answer, "No, sweetheart. You'll be like you. That's more than enough." For a while, I thought that might be the end of the story. Peace after the storm, redemption after ruin. But life, as always, had one more chapter to write. It was late spring when I heard the familiar sound of a truck pulling into my driveway. The gravel crunched slow, hesitant. I looked up from my garden and saw a silver pickup, old, dusty, a little dented on one side. Ethan Caldwell climbed out. He looked nothing like the man who'd stood on my lawn, shouting about real family. He'd lost weight, his hair streaked with gray. His suit was gone, replaced by jeans and a plain shirt. His shoulders were lower, his eyes softer, the kind of look a man wears after he's been humbled by life itself. He stood there by the truck for a moment, like a soldier afraid to approach the front line. Then finally he spoke. "Mr. Cole," he said quietly, "can we talk?" I straightened up, wiping dirt from my hands. "Course we can. You're on my land, aren't you?" He gave a short, nervous laugh. "Yeah, I guess I am." We stood there a while, just letting the silence do the heavy lifting. The birds were chirping, the sun, high and golden. When he finally looked at me, his voice cracked. "I owe you an apology, a real one," he said. "I was wrong. About you, about family, about everything." I didn't say anything. I just let him speak. He swallowed hard. "After that day, I lost my job. My folks moved to Florida. Naomi stopped answering my calls. I thought I could rebuild in Austin, start over. But everywhere I went, people knew. That video followed me. They'd look at me and see the man who tried to take an old teacher's house." He shook his head. "And they were right. That's who I was." I watched his hands. They were shaking, not from anger this time, but from shame. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "But I needed to tell you I understand now. What you did, what you built, that wasn't weakness. That was strength I couldn't even recognize. I thought money made a man powerful. Turns out love does." Something inside me eased when I heard that. Maybe because I'd waited months to see whether the lesson would ever take root. I set down my trowel and motioned toward the porch steps. "Sit," I said. "If we're gonna talk about forgiveness, best to do it somewhere comfortable." He sat, shoulders sagged, hands clasped. He looked like a man finally ready to face his own reflection. "You wanted my house," I said, breaking the quiet. "Now, you see what it really holds." He nodded, tears gathering. "I see it now. I see it all. This place isn't made of wood or nails, Ethan. It's made of memories, of laughter, of fights and forgiveness, and long nights holding a child who's scared of the dark. That's what this roof stands on. Not blood, not ownership, just love." His voice cracked again. "I'd give anything to take back what I did." "You can't," I said softly. "But you can start from here." He looked up at me, eyes red. "Do you think Naomi could ever forgive me?" I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "Forgiveness lives here, Ethan. But it doesn't live cheap. You'll have to earn it. Not with words, but with the kind of life you live after this." He nodded, his jaw tightening, as if trying to hold himself together. "I understand." We sat there for a long while, two men who'd once stood on opposite sides of a battlefield, now just quiet, in the same light. The breeze moved through the trees, carrying the faint sound of children's laughter from somewhere down the road. Before he left, Ethan stood and extended his hand. It trembled, but it was steady enough to mean something. I took it. It wasn't absolution, but it was a start. As his truck disappeared down the road, Layla ran out from the house, waving her little arms. Who was that, Grandpa? Just someone finding his way home, I said. That night after dinner, I sat on the porch swing while Naomi read to Layla inside. The sun sank low behind the pines, painting the sky in colors too deep for words. I thought about every child I'd ever raised, every sleepless night, every fight, every heartbreak, and how it all led to this, an old man sitting on his porch, finally at peace with the world he'd helped build. You see, blood might start a family, but love is what keeps it alive. And as the stars came out over Willow Creek, I whispered a prayer, not of thanks, but of continuation. Because some stories don't end. They just keep finding their way back home, inspired by true acts of love across America.